is from the opening of the campus. So our first 3 buildings on campus were Biological Sciences, Lecture Hall 1, which is now the cinema, and a building called Gym 1, which predated the Commons. So where the Commons is now, there used to be a student center there that had a cafeteria and a couple other kind of function spaces. That was Gym 1. So this is an image from the opening of campus. So here you can see this is our Lecture Hall 1, or the cinema, and Biological Sciences. So that's kind of the angle for having that be included as part of our tour. The administration building, a couple of aerial photos here. So again, here's our Biological Sciences. This is Gym 1, Lecture Hall 1. This is from 72. I know these are small, but the other one is 73. And here's our administration building.
I love these names, by the way. It's,
yeah. And that's purposeful. That could also be a part of your research. That's very purposeful.
It feels like this is the America that sent like astronauts into space.
Yeah.
It's like, you know,
Gym 1, Gym 2,
yeah.
Biological Sciences. Yeah. So one of the things I think we were talking about with the administration building, pull up it's here. So this is where we might talk more about some of the campus myths that are in place. I love talking about campus myths. One of them is that a lot of the early planning was done to kind of prevent or cut off student protest and student riots. So we have the form of the administration building, very tall, very skinny windows. The other thing that they often talk about are some of the stairs that run alongside the chemistry building and then fine arts. They're irregular sized, they're kind of a little too short. And then the campus tunnels are another thing that people often talk about in terms of having some sort of preventative riot where people could kind of travel underneath and get around this campus riots. This is a feature of when the campus was built and developed. So late 60s, early 70s, there were a lot of campus protests. I'm not an expert in that, so I'm not going to go into it. But that's one feature that you might think about with the administration building.
So are you saying it's a myth that that's the way, or
I don't know. For the tunnels especially, what I've seen in the records is that they didn't want to have any, there's no electric lines or telephone poles on campus. They're all underneath. And that's why that's what I've seen, that's why they built the tunnels, is that's where they wanted to have all their infrastructure. I don't know, you may find otherwise.
I mean, to me, I don't know the answer to that question either, but I think this is why it's important to give the context of when the campus was built and what else was going on and how these stories came about, whether they're true or not.
Yeah.
I think you could also sort of fit sort of myths and their sort of like the reasons why they exist and how you sort of refute them as like kind of if you think about sort of interpretive writing as like almost like a typology of different kinds of things. It's like a lot of, you can say, you may think X, or a lot of people say X, but really Y, you know, is just could be a solid lead for a story about the administration building. Like, you think that this is sort of a reflection of this aspect of the campus's sort of early historical context, but it was actually just, you know, the building was built on a hope and a prayer because like early 70s state construction budgets were super austere and the architects sucked, you know. I mean, and that may not be even the case either. It may just be like that's what they wanted to build, and he was a great architect and gave them exactly what they wanted. You know.
Yeah, I don't mean myth as a negative connotation in terms of historical research. Myths can be great; they can really inform, you know, a lot. But just bringing it up as, yeah, that's all. Back up. So the library, one thing about the library, let me click open this photo here. So in talking about the library, there's usually 3 areas. Ooh, we have the tower, we have phase 1 and phase 2. The library again was one of the earlier buildings on campus. So this is phase 1. This is where we are right now. So this section here, this was opened in 1970. Phase 2, which is just the other wing over here, opened in, or no, I'm sorry, phase 1 opened in 1968. Phase 2 opened in 1974, so that's where the RLC is, some of your cereals on the 2nd floor. And that's how the library, this is what the library looked like for decades and decades. The tower was opened in 1997, so quite a big distance. One thing that with the campus again that I think is really interesting is they really wanted to have kind of a residential area, an academic area, and then the library and what was then Gym 1 is now the Commons were kind of the intersection of those 2 things. So kind of the parallel center of the library and the Commons. And I will say, this is not necessarily our style now, a style that necessarily appeals to our eye, but phase 1 did win an architectural award. Or phase, let's see, they won an award in 1975, so when the building had both phases.
So weird, 'cause now I think it's a beautiful building. I
It's
love
coming
the
back
tower.
around.
But that is, I don't know, it doesn't
The
have
photo?
Go outside.
The building itself.
Yeah.
Philistine.
Yeah. And they also, I'm trying to think where I saw this, but they did, I mean, the library is kind of this pressed concrete, which was very much an architectural feature at that point, whereas the rest of the buildings on campus are this, very bright brick red. So again, that's kind of another off point. I'm not an architectural studies person, so I'll leave that to you guys. Yeah. Well, now, I bet you could miss it then.
Yeah.
It's kind of low profile here.
Yeah.
I'm interested somewhat in the usage of that pressed concrete for a library building, because at my undergraduate university there was a building on campus that was used as the architecture studio when I was there, but it was built around the same era as this library was, and it was built as a library in the same style with the same materials. And I just wonder what that some sort of story is, why pressed concrete would be good for a library building. And the same sort of thing with the angled things coming out with little windows, and there's something there in that era with that particular style.
Yeah, in the 1970s, the construction costs were going up pretty substantially for a variety of reasons, including sort of the rapid increases in energy costs, and state budgets for construction were falling, and so you find that the cost per square foot of using poured concrete was much cheaper than a lot of the alternative building materials that were available in that period. And some of the durability issues that are now clear to us about the sort of reinforced concrete structures weren't as clear like 30-40 years ago, and so it's a lot driven by economics. But there's some good secondary sources about brutalism and sort of concrete architecture that might be helpful for the library story.
And then the last section the last site, I guess, on here is the Commons. It's kind of a centerpiece building now. Again, it did replace Gym 1, which was another student center on campus. There's also the University Center, the UC building, which again is also a student space. So kind of the differences between those. The Commons opened in 2001.
Was the University Center the original Commons kind of thing?
Gym 1 was the original
Oh.
Commons. Yeah. The University Center, I want to say, opened in like the early 80s. So they didn't have it for a while. There used to be, actually it's still here on this map. One of the original buildings on campus from when this was part of Spring Grove is up here. So kind of nestled in with some of the apartment buildings. There was a building called Hillcrest. Where'd it go? Here? It's no longer here. They tore it down. But it served for a while as kind of a student meeting place. SGA had their offices there, that kind of thing.
Didn't they
There's
also just build a new, student center up in the apartment area?
Yes, there's an apartment.
Yeah, it's kind of here. Yeah. I don't actually, I haven't even been back here. I don't know what's
I
back
haven't either.
there now.
So I could say it's just mostly like wooded area where you're pointing, like where you were pointing. And the community center is actually a little bit further up the hill.
Yeah, it's along the road here.
Yeah.
So, I should know I don't know this. So like student organizations or like the student paper and all, where is it now? Is it
So
in the
most of
Commons?
the student offices are in the Commons.
Yes, I see.
The Retriever is still in the University Center.
Okay. I feel like we should do the University Center.
Which is it's a very odd building when you're inside. It
Yeah.
doesn't-
Because
I don't
you can't
understand
get
it.
any like, well actually no, you can get Starbucks or Chick-fil-A, but when you're inside it's like a ballroom and some
Yeah.
event space
Yeah.
and then there's like
I mean, I think
Freedom
it's
Alliance.
interesting because it might speak a little bit to campus culture at whatever time it was built, like a ballroom. Who goes to a ball? So,
And it has the plaza, which is really nice.
yeah, that's true.
I'll show you very
I'd
quickly.
actually,
That's
I have
how-
another idea.
That's how the housing
I feel
commons
like
is now.
it'd be nice if there was 6 sites, because then each person could do 2, so that's why I'm like, that's what I'm thinking. But I'm also thinking, about the green space. Like, it doesn't